Okay, I think we're live.
What's up, brother? How you doing today, man?
I'm great, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, bro. I'm doing all right.
I
So
didn't
what
do
you
an
want
audio
me to start
check.
off the topic today, or you got it?
Sorry. I didn't do an audio check. How is my audio actually?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay, we're good. Okay, topic for today. Wanted to at least start with evil, the nature of evil, the relationship between, I guess, the concept of evil and the concept of the shadow, and we'll definitely go from there. So, take it away, man.
Okay. I want to start off with a point that I feel like that I bring up a lot that I feel like a lot of people miss, and this is gonna make it a bit controversial. So when you look at the word, I can't remember if it's devil or Satan. One of them is represented with the word adversary, and it means the opposition. And so when I look at this, I understand that what we perceive as evil is just the opposite of yourself, right? And so I also understand that the devil or evil was sent here by God to test whether or not we would betray God or not. This was the whole conversation here. The devil said, "Well, they'll never be loyal to you like I am," and God said, "Try." So evil is only testing to see our true self. That's why it's the adversary. It's the opposite of who you truly are. It is testing you to see if you will break under the pressure. So that's my perception of evil from the root level, and I'll let you go from there, and then we'll build on that second layer after that.
I agree with so much of that. Okay, I'm gonna set aside the shadow for a second because I brought that up at the outset, but evil. You know, I was speaking with some peers when I was in graduate school about a year ago about the nature of evil, and one of them said that they believe that there are evil actions, but they don't believe that people can be evil. And I had a similar conversation relatively recently with a professor when Charlie Kirk was assassinated because I thought that that kind of political assassination was rightfully characterized as evil. And he offered some pushback and instead of saying evil said that, well, maybe he had a psychotic break. And so those are just two examples of an overall pattern that I'm seeing in our culture where I feel like we are naive about the reality of evil, or we are at least loathsome to discuss it in the open. I agree about how evil could be characterized as the opposite of good. And what's interesting is that I think we are willing to say that they're good people and that they're good behaviors, but for some reason, when it comes to calling people evil, we're a little shy. So I don't know if you share in that sentiment of our shyness or naivete about evil, but I think that part of the things I want to do in this conversation is really flesh out what evil is, because I think as a culture, we don't want to forget about this necessary part of reality that, like the way you said it, tests us and I would say even molds us. And if interacted with properly and integrated properly, can push us to be closer to God. So,
So let's think about so for me, let's think about three major things here. First, our perception of evil. So a lot of times evil is perceived based off an action that someone does. You can't call someone evil without them doing something or taking action. If a person's just standing there, you can't call them evil. So they're not by nature evil. Their actions make them evil. And so, on a layer after that, I don't believe that good or evil are innate traits. I believe that you're innately neutral and that good and evil, like thoughts, pass by this neutral thing and it either chooses to attach to them or doesn't. And so, for me, I believe a lot of times that it's not that people are avoiding evil. The third point is what's evil. If I see somebody smack somebody grandma, I'm gonna say it's evil. But if you smack my grandmama, I'm probably gonna smack you. You see what I'm saying? Is that evil? Yes, because it's spiteful. But I justify it because I think it's okay because of me saying equal and opposite reaction. But is it my job to do that? No, it's not. That's God's job. And so I think often the thing is We become good or evil when we believe that we have to control the nature of reality.
How about this? I believe that good and evil are real spirits
I can agree with
that
that.
we can participate in.
It's a choice.
Okay, right, right. So I was in preparation for this conversation, I was thinking about three stories, and I'm not going to go through all of them here, but hopefully throughout the conversation. The story of Osiris and Set, then the story of Adam and Eve, and then the story of Cain and Abel. And so with Cain and Abel, you know this, but for in case anyone's watching that doesn't know the story of Cain and Abel, that's I think it's the third story in Genesis, but Cain and Abel are the sons of Adam and Eve, and this is after the fall, and this is after Adam and Eve have eaten the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And so at this point in human history, you can assume that the perceptions of evil or the understanding that evil exists is with humanity now. And Cain and Abel and all of humanity are forced to work because of the actions of Adam and Eve. And I'm not going to say the whole story, but Cain and Abel both sacrifice to God, and Abel is able to sacrifice his most valuable possessions, the fattiest portions of his first flock, and he receives the blessing of God, but Cain doesn't. And God says something to Cain like, if you did what was good, then you would receive my blessing. And then he also says to Cain that sin lies at your door like a predatory animal, and you can invite it in. And that's kind of what I want to highlight here. Like in this story, evil is acknowledged as a real thing, right? Or at least if you read this far into the Bible. And God seems to, he doesn't say evil, but he says sin. And maybe we can pause here and talk about whether or not sin is the right way to think about evil. Um, Sorry, let me try to round that off. I like that story because it acknowledges the reality of evil through sin as something that's kind of alive that can possess you as a spirit, but you can invite it in. You can voluntarily allow it to possess you. And I think I would say that people can be good or evil to the degree that they make those decisions to align themselves either with the spirit of good or the spirit of evil.
I think this would be a good part to bring in. The next thing of what I really want to talk about is understanding like Solomon's wisdom. So before I get into what Solomon's wisdom is, I just want to get kind of what I've gotten from it and how it relates to what you're saying. I believe that angels and demons are emotions, thoughts. You see what I'm saying? These beings come by and they whisper in your ear. Where are they whispering? I don't see them. I don't feel them. It's in your mind. These are the messengers of God. They deliver God's messages and Satan's as well. And so I also think that these angels and demons are not separate of you, but they're a part of your subconscious mind. How we think of like egregores or like even we think about epigenetic program, your ancestors, all of this, like your ancestors come and talk to you. Okay, well, yeah, it's an angel. How did an angel get to you? It's in your DNA. You see what I'm saying? Like, so for me, good and evil are attachments to aspects of your subconscious self. And so when we get into Solomon's wisdom and knowing the names of the demons, you're knowing the names, you're knowing your emotions that are hindering you, the emotion that you're attached to, the feeling that you're attached to. And you can personify it if you need to better communicate with it. And so in a metaphysical side, I believe that when we look at good and evil, we look at emotion or we look at thought, all of these are different levels of what we consider the fourth dimension of the mind. And so how you relate to these things, how you commingle with these things and interact with these things determines what I consider your balance, right? And so this idea of you taming your demons means that you're making good with your emotions. So let's get into the shadow side of this. How does the shadow fit in? Well, your shadow are the emotions that you're putting behind you. And so if you're putting these emotions behind you, they want your attention. So they get bigger and bigger and louder and louder. And so your shadow expands as you ignore these emotions that have energy that needs to be expressed. And these become the demons that you face. the evil thoughts that you have. So a lot of times, the people that, in my perception, the reason why I don't believe in evil people is that I give them empathy, assuming that something in their life has traumatized them to hold on to a part of themselves that they're now expressing in an evil action. So this is the expression of the shadow that is evil. So it's still not evil. It's just it's you say you have love for something and you hold in love so long that it becomes hate. And then you express that hate instead of the love that you originally had. See how that can work? And so when I look at cycles like that, I don't I believe in understanding something presently. Like what is the state of it? How do we get here? What shifted it? So if I believe that we're initially neutral, something has to push you either to the good or the bad side. And what moves you is the emotion, the thought, the idea, or trauma, which is still it's still an emotional thing. You see what I'm saying? So all of this happens in the subconscious. So whether we talk about the fourth dimension being higher or being subconscious brain, that's where I think all of this happens. And I think that's the battleground between the reality and who you truly are.
I agree with the push aspect of how we're talking about what causes someone to commit evil acts. And I should also say that whatever we say for evil, we would also say for good, since I'm assuming, right. We both
Yep.
agree that evil and good are on the same spectrum, just opposite tendencies.
They're two different sides of the same. So this is why we talk about the masculine and feminine on different poles. This is just duality. Anything you separate in twos have the same principles. Some of the principles go over here, some of the principles go over here, and they balance out in the middle.
Hmm.
So you can call it good or evil on either side. It's just about the principles they carry and embodying them. They have to, the truth is, in order for duality to exist, things have to be split a certain way. So order can't go with chaos because those are two separate things.
Hmm.
And so as you get into twos, you can separate things in twos. When you get into threes, you can separate things in threes. And you see how like it's a billion people on the world. So we have a whole lot of different ways that these perspectives can line up. So there's no way you can't say, well, it's either this or that with humans because no, there's too many humans to say that. You know what I'm saying? But in the reality, there's only so many different poles that can be lined up. There's only like within all of the things that exist, there's only two sides of it that you can sit on
Hmm.
as far as the extremes go. Because the extremes begin to connect as you go one way or another. That's why we say evil instead of hate or dislike. It's all that goes under evil. You see what I'm saying? And then we say like love, joy, prosperity, that all goes under good. And so there's like this clear path of which way you're going. Most things you could say you either consider it an evil thing or a good thing, a good quality or evil quality, a positive quality or a negative quality, a masculine quality or a feminine quality. And then masculine and feminine becomes a thing. Well, if you consider it good to be masculine, then you want to be masculine. Then you consider it bad to be feminine. That's why masculine men think feminine mannerisms are a bad thing. You see what I'm saying? And so we just get into this weird song and dance of perception almost, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Now I want to, this will be tough to do, but it would be cool to try to stack good and evil, masculine and femininity onto the hero's journey. Because this is what I'm trying to explore. When I think of good, I also think of adaptive. And when I think of adaptive, I think of aligning yourself with the nature of reality. And when I think of aligning yourself with the nature of reality, I think of aligning yourself with God.
And so so what you're saying is powerful here because what we consider evil is things that are stagnant, things that are stuck the way that they are, things that can't accept the changes of the world. Look at most villains. Most villains are stuck at some trauma point they had, or at spot, or they're unwilling to accept the way the world is changing. Think about like when we think about like I don't want to be like socialist here. I'm gonna give a couple of examples just to not be crazy here. So we think about rednecks. Rednecks are stuck in time. They don't want to go into what America is becoming post Civil War. Or even just talking about like whatever the Confederacy is. They didn't want to change America. They became evil in history because they didn't want to see America change. This is stagnation at work. And so what we realize is, so I talk about the idea of like separation and unity. Evil are so for me that's where I think about good and evil too. So it's like if you're trying to separation, if you don't want to bring things together or integrate more information, you're usually evil. If you want to break things apart or cause disharmony, All of these things that were evil. And then unity or love is about bringing all these things together. So if we can't work on the same ideas or come together, then we're not practicing unity. So that's why my biggest thing is like, is it or isn't love? That's my quote. Because you look at something, you look at action. Is it love? If it ain't love, it's evil. That's the separation here. If it doesn't contribute to love or unity or bringing people together, if it's causing separation, if it's forcing people to not be able to integrate or grow, it's most likely separation. So that would be considered evil. And so I get into it, but I also, so let's get into the example you said earlier. You were talking about the hero's journey and how it applies. So I believe the hero is by nature good, and his adversaries are by nature bad. But let's pay attention here. As the hero goes through this journey, he's breaking somebody that's stagnant in a place that doesn't want him to get past. These people are stagnant. So think of these like energy blocks in your chakra as you go up. This is the same concept here. That there's this thing, there are things as you progress towards your freedom that will try to stop you based off of their limitations. This is the evil. But these beings aren't evil, they're positioned and stuck. But if you think about it, going back to the devil and the God conversation, the evil was placed there to test the hero. And if we're talking about the hero's journey being an archetypal story, it has to include the test. And we know that part of the hero's journey that's necessity is the test. So the evil is there, but it's there as a necessity, as part of the program. So people have to assume these roles because think about this. Somebody evil could be good for the beginning of their life and evil for the end of it, or evil for the beginning of their life and good for the end of it. They have to play both sides. So to say to catch someone in their evil phase of life being a villain to me, they could be a villain to me, and that'd be the only time they had to be evil in their life. And they go off and live the rest of their life and be a fucking hero. And I'm the one person on earth that thinks they're evil. Did that make them a bad person? No. It means they were shit to me. Could I argue that they maybe didn't have to? Who the fuck knows? Who the fuck cares? This shit is ordered to work a certain way. There needs to be friction. I'm not blaming the people that caused the friction anymore. If they're purposely just diving down a pit of I want to be fucked up, then hey, do your thing. Somebody has to do that. But I'm not gonna be like, I need to stop you from being evil. No, somebody got to do it. I don't want to be fucking evil. I'm not. I'm glad that this happened naturally. That I'm not getting forced to be evil for no reason. That's why I don't go do nothing I don't want to do. You have the choice. Somebody has to choose that. Just like somebody has to choose to take care of kids. I don't want to take care of kids. Does that make me evil? No, I just don't want to watch nobody else kids. You see what I'm saying? And so that becomes a line because some people say, well, oh, you evil and spiteful because, oh, you don't want to watch your nephew. That ain't got nothing to do with me. Now, I could agree that that is separation because in unity, I shouldn't have a problem with minding for him because at the end of the day, it ain't going to be much. But personally, I'm not in a place where I'm okay with that. And we have to give people that space to grow and figure out things. And that's really where my empathy came from. My empathy came from the need to understand how I can hold space for people that are still growing. Because if not, I'm gonna be mad at everybody that ain't figured shit out yet. And that ain't gonna work for nobody. Because how can I help if I think everybody's stupid and I hate them or whatever the fuck it comes to? That's evil too.
This is something else I wanted to discuss. It's essentially the hypocrisy. So if I understood you correctly, you acknowledge that everyone has the capacity for good and evil, or has the
Mm-hmm.
ability to choose to go down the path of good or evil, but you don't localize those spirits within the individuals all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this understanding that we're all on a journey and we're all at different parts along that journey gives you empathy to be able to understand and perhaps be less judgmental when you're interacting with people. I I think I have a different approach where I also know that I'm evil. Like I put myself in this category. And so when I'm speaking of the necessity to prepare yourself to become victorious against evil by doing things such as delaying gratification. You mentioned the emotions before, being able to integrate your emotions, learning how to pay attention to your emotions, all of this individuation work, let's say, or shadow work as a part of individuation. I lost my train of thought. All of that work that's needed to prepare yourself to battle evil, I put myself in that category and I try to walk the walk, but I obviously know that I fail. And given that I'm a human and I think other people are similar to me, I know that we all necessarily fail. And but still, for me, the standard is not the eradication of evil in your own heart. That's let me reframe that. The goal is the eradication of evil in your own heart. That's what I would say. But
Nope.
I
Not to
but I
me.
would say
I
that
disagree there.
I would say that you know that you're never going to you know that you're never going to make that. And so for me, there's a grace that comes with like setting a very high goal so that way you can orient yourself and tracking your progress and trying to make progress. But there's also grace in knowing that you are a limited creature, and to the degree that you willingly distance yourself from God, you're making yourself weaker and you're increasing the chance that you will fail and continue to go down that path. And so,
I can add to that if you need
go
me
ahead.
to.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to say is that when we talk about, I love the point you brought up because it really integrates in the deeper level of this shadow work that people try to miss out on. So for me, when I got into shadow work and I got into understanding, one of the first realizations I had was that I was narcissistic. Not only that I was narcissistic, but I embodied at some level the traits that I was most disgusted by. And so what that does is it allows you to realize that you've been a villain to someone, and that in this play, you are evil to someone. And so I think what I've begun to do and what's given me this level of like, this is what I consider awakening or an enlightened perspective to me, is understanding that, hey, I have to play both the good and the evil role depending on the situation. And if I can understand when I'm being asked to be someone's adversary for their growth, I could possibly potentially make better of this situation. Like I could be someone's evil in a way that I need to, in a way that's serving to them. So, for instance, this idea, I have an idea of help or hinder. A lot of times we think we need to help someone, and it's like a lot of times you're in their way. When they ask you for help, telling them no is what you were supposed to do. But because you didn't have the heart to tell them no, you failed at being evil. See, we worry too much about failing at being good. We never consider failing at being evil. When have we helped someone in a way that hindered them? When is our desire to be the light blinded someone from seeing the truth of what was going on in their life? This is what I like people to consider. And this is a very touchy topic because you have to think a certain way to comprehend what I'm saying. But there's an aspect of life where this is why I don't believe in evil people, because I believe that it's like situational. Like telling a kid no, he can't have fucking sweets because he got a cavity last week is evil to the kid. What are we talking about? You see what I'm saying? But it's a necessary evil. Tough love. These there are concepts that are underlit in society. I say all that to say that I don't believe you want to eradicate evil from your life, but you need to understand when you need to drip feed it in. Like you need to be able to separate yourself from certain situations in order to survive them. This is just survival 101. You know what I'm saying? Like you need a little bit of chaos. You need the ability to be able to say, fuck it. Ah, you need that. You need that because it's not only is it balancing for your subconscious mind, but it's a part of the system that you have to experience to understand the entirety of what's going on. And you have to be responsible for your evil nature as well. And that's what I consider shadow work. Shadow work to me is realizing that you are evil at times. You have been evil to someone. And it's okay because you didn't do it intentionally. But an acknowledgement of it means that you should refine how you act continuously. Like you said, you're never going to purpose always have all the darkness out. But if I learn how to use it where it's needed, I could be more in balance because it is needed in reality because we discussed that we need a balancing in the world. And if we're all doing more of the balancing work, there's not so many people doing, you know what I'm saying? I believe that it balances out somewhere. And so I don't, and let's get into this a little bit more. How can I word this without? So there's like an aspect of like murder is bad, but if you cut down a tree to make a bridge, you killed the tree. You see what I'm saying? But you used it for something useful. Or is it better to let the tree die and then pick it up and use it? This is a morality question here. Does it make a difference? To humans, it doesn't, but to trees, it does. But if you don't consider tree emotions or whatever, or the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter. I say all that to say that we do a lot of evil things because it's justified by society. And that in order to live in society and to have a balanced society, you have to embrace both your darkness and your light. And the way I was taught is that you should drip feed a little bit of your darkness into your light from time to time so that you don't be blinded by the light. Like you need both. Their contrast creates vision, if that makes sense.
I I agree with a lot of that. I think maybe we could further define good and evil because I think that we might be using the terms differently. Because I agree with so much of what you're saying, but I think good, evil, moral, immoral. I think that I think we've laid down a lot of dualities, and I kind of want to stack them with each other to see how they feel, for lack of a better term. So I'm using moral and immoral and good and evil synonymously.
Mhm.
I'm also under the impression that moral, immoral, good, evil, adaptive, maladaptive.
Yeah.
I would stop. Okay, does that jive with you?
Yes. I mean, it goes like to separation unity. So adaptive is unifying, maladaptive is separation. Because if you're not adapting, you're separating from what is.
So I would define evil as the willing distancing of your being from the balanced, adaptive reality. I, I don't know, that
So
might be too metaphysical, but like when I think of the hero's journey, I think of the hero's journey as the process of adaptation. And you can also read from that journey patterns of action in the world and patterns of perception and patterns of valuation. And you can choose not to embark on that journey. However, it is, it could be something as simple as you are trying to deal with your own anger issues. And within that journey, you could imagine that in, you're at point A and you realize that you have these fits of rage that are impeding your ability to get your work done at your job, or they're inhibiting your social relationships, whatever it is. In order to overcome that problem, there's first of all the acknowledgement that you have that problem. There's the facing of the dragon, right? Your own emotions and your own unconscious, and whatever that reason is. Maybe you go to therapy, maybe you talk to someone, maybe you start writing, whatever. You're exploring that realm of the unknown and the realm of chaos. And when you're down there, hopefully you can defeat the dragon and then reemerge now with this integrated emotion that makes you a more whole being. And in my mind, that process, and or at least the willingness to engage with that process voluntarily is good and that is moral. And I would also say that it's adaptive. But the decision to not embark on that journey, particularly when you know that it's something that you need to work on, I would define that as evil. And we could also say that there are levels to what's good and levels to what's evil, but just to separate it from good, that's an example of a deviation, a voluntary deviation from the hero's journey. That's something that I would consider evil.
yeah, and so think about the hero's journeys that we've watched where the character did give up. What happened most of the time in the story? They were forced to get back into the journey at some point in time, whether they wanted to or not. It's almost as if so I'm in a headspace that everything is ordered, but it doesn't have to be finished in a certain amount of time, if that makes sense. So we're going towards good. We're going towards unity. We're going towards service to others. and that was a point I wanted to make a minute ago, is that another way that the conscious community, another dual thing that we do is service to others and service to self. So the hero deciding that he didn't want to go on the journey no more is service to self because his journey is service to the world, service to others. Him accomplishing his journey makes the world better, gives the world some information, brings something more to the space. Him choosing service to himself makes him rich. Sits him down somewhere with a treasure or whatever, one of the kings or somebody offer him along the way that he could have picked up and just said, fuck it. You know what I'm saying? And so there's an idea. And so really the thing that we're saying here is that there's clear separation between good and evil. But like you said, there's a spectrum there. And that's why it's so important. And that's why I don't really it's such a perception thing. It's a lot of semantics. It's an interesting conversation because if we really want to dial into it, we have to accept that these things are two sides of the same coin, and that the line between the two is thin in the motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not a whole lot. Like, if you see a cute dog playing with a kid, that's a good dog. In 2 seconds, he could bite the fuck out of that kid. That's no longer a good dog. What was the separation there? You see what I'm saying? Was it the action? Was it the thought? Did the kid do something to scare the dog or put the dog in the fear or trauma response? We don't know. But now that we killed the dog, no, don't kill the dog. I don't believe we should. But some people will argue, yes, that's a bad dog. He should be euthanized for biting the kid. That's the range here. You see what I'm saying? There's a range there.
I want to tie in autonomy and responsibility with this conversation because there's a subset of our culture that believes that, for example, the puppy can't do good or evil. Now, obviously, we all say that's a good boy, like that's a good puppy, like I get it, but we would accept that the puppy can't do evil the same way we would accept that an infant can't do evil. And I think that one of the reasons we all would agree with that is that there's no autonomy there. There's no responsibility. There's no choice there. Well, okay,
Is
I'll pause
it?
there. What do you think about that? Like I don't think
Oh,
I
my
think
boy,
that we
my boy, my boy.
define I think that we define I would say that infants are the ultimate victims where if if there are such things as victims, infants are a prime example of victims. Let's say like 6 months old, right? And one of the reasons we call them victims is because they cannot do anything for themselves. They cannot be responsible for anything. They don't have the autonomy to say, I'm gonna go down this behavior, I'm gonna go down that behavior. Now, as a good parent, you will watch your child and you will see that at some point they start to develop the knowledge and become autonomous. And then you give them little things, and you give them responsibilities and you see that they make decisions, you teach them the consequences of their actions. But as a society, we've said, all right, infants you just you can't but at some point this transitions with maturity, and even if let's say you're 30 years old but you're intoxicated where it's like you're not autonomous, you're not there, you're not of one mind, you're still responsible if you kill someone because you were drunk driving. And and I would say that that's considered that could be considered an evil act. So I guess what do you think about the role of responsibility when it comes to our perceptions of good and evil?
I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna seem a little bit like I'm just like fuck everything, right? But it's the only way I can think of saying it. You have to realize that how much of our societal pressure is man-made. You see what I'm saying? Like nature isn't telling the kid not to fall off the cliff. If you fall off the cliff and break your leg, that's your lesson. We try to prevent that. So I believe that. So we get back into the idea of natural order and then the matrix order. I believe that human ideas have created this layer of how things should be that nature doesn't give a fuck about. Like it does hold your hand a little bit, but it doesn't. Like babies, yes, I believe that babies are not autonomous, but I don't believe that they are just like so the Bible says that you're not responsible for your thoughts until what 7 years old or whatever. Like there's like psychologically, we don't have a conscious mind until 7. So everything before that is a subconscious programming that you figuring your way out through things based off of your environment and you're putting together what's going on. But I just don't like the idea of being responsible or being courteous or having etiquette. All of these are human ideas. All of this is human ideas. So no, a baby can't be responsible. We're not supposed to be responsible. Honestly, that's something that we came up to make society more livable. You know what I'm saying? So I do understand that in a society we do need these things. Like there is a need for order, there is a need for this and that. But this goes back into the idea of a masculine word on top of a feminine one. Is that do we put principles and rules on top of some shit that already had principles and rules? You see what I'm saying? So we could be out of line with that. So I said that not to say that, oh, well, babies can make decisions. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that there is an aspect of us saying that a baby isn't responsible is like saying, like, bro, before we had houses, cars, and clothes, Eve put Cain and Abel out in the woods somewhere, and they had to figure it the fuck out. They was there, they was watching, but it wasn't like they had a crib and nice clothes and a pamper on, and that all that isn't there. So this idea of safety and protection for a child is natural, yes, but to the extent that we go with it, isn't. Not saying that, and I say all that to say that I think people will argue that the dog is more. Because are we saying that the dog is more or less autonomous than the child? You know what I'm saying? Are we saying that because the dog should know better and the child shouldn't, it doesn't know better that he can beat up the dog and it's okay. The dog just shouldn't bite him because it's a child and the dog should know better. What the fuck are we talking about? You know, I guess it's just reality here. Thing happened. Two people did actions, results. What are we gonna do? I think there's so many different ways to look at it. I don't really want to pick a good or evil person. This is what happened. This is how that makes me feel. This is what I want to do about it. If nobody else agrees, I'll leave. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'll let y'all figure it out. Because it ain't got nothing to do with me. Ain't my kid or my dog. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a matter of how do we begin to make decisions? How do we determine who's responsible for making the decision or why or what pretenses they're on? And we have a lot of these preconceived notions, but I would argue they need to be reevaluated a bit.
I agree. I 100% agree, which is why I, in part, am enjoying these conversations because I think that's what we're doing. But it's also specifically why I'm enjoying reading Carl Jung, and I'm currently reading a book by one of his students, Eric Neumann. I sent you that picture of after that last
Yeah.
episode where you taught me about Sophia, and then talk about synchronicity. The next day I'm reading the page, and, and Neumann's talking about that same story. So it's very interesting. But here's something that I think might be helpful. So again, I'm gonna put adaptation as the goal. And the hero's journey is the process of, when done successfully, increasing your adaptability. I think that the hero's journey, how did we discover the hero's journey? In part, scholars read many, many ancient stories, religious stories, ancient myths, and was able to extract out a common pattern from all of these stories. But before we had oral stories, or sorry, before we had written stories, we had oral stories. And before we had oral stories, we had rituals. And before it was rituals, I don't even know what it would have been before that. It might have just been patterns of action, and we just watched each other, and then we started to imitate each other. And then, when you imitate someone, you generate an image in that mind, and then somehow we can transfer that image onto a rock, and that becomes the beginnings of religion, right? And so you have all of these different layers of patterns, and I think that you can extract out the process of adaptation through all of those patterns. And so when I am trying to talk about what an adaptive social principle would be, I think that that principle has to be aligned also with what we know philosophically, and then deeper than that, what we know mythologically and religiously, and then deeper than that, what we know to be adaptive in terms of patterns of behavior. And so I agree that our culture can shift and degenerate and become misaligned, but I do think that there's a way that we can shift cultures and set up our culture such that it's more aligned with the reality of things. And I'm also not trying to collapse culture into nature and just say that, well, we should all just go back to being hunter-gatherers. It's like, no, but there's a culture in itself is great, but there has to be a tension and a harmony between our nature and how we organize society.
And so for me, I agree with that. I call it aligning with truth. If you give me an idea and you can't show me somewhere that it exists outside of your mind, is it truth? You know what I'm saying? And so what I believe what we're talking about is that we have a lot of ideas that aren't we live by a lot of principles that are hypothetical in principle. Like we believe this works this way, and because we believe this works this way, we act this way. So because our belief of our understanding of how nature works is out of alignment, our actions are out of alignment with nature. So in order for us to get closer to what I believe is natural, is that we have to go back to observe. Like you said, people observe things, they've seen these patterns. Once they observe these patterns, they've written down. But I think it's happening is that we've had the patterns written down so long we're not observing them in actuality anymore, and we haven't realized that they've changed. And so, what I mean by that is I believe that society, as they grow, as more people are involved, the dynamics change in a way that requires us to shift in some form or fashion or to commingle differently. Like what was necessary for royal families to spread their bloodline isn't necessary for us anymore. Now, granted, you could accidentally go over there and catch your cousin and decide you not know it was your cousin and do something you ain't got no business doing. That's your business. Some people do it, but it's not necessary anymore. It used to be a necessity because you wanted your bloodline to live on. Those ideas aren't really needed anymore. And it was necessary to keep up with who was in your bloodline because it wasn't enough people on the planet for you to just go fuck anybody. You know what I'm saying? Because then you end up with the Mad Kings, the different diseases that come from incest, things of that nature. So this is just going back into out of bounds. So I got what I'm trying to say is that what we've realized about good and evil, like we talk about the idea of being uh in or out of balance, good or evil, light or dark, separation or unity, adaptive or maladaptive is what you said earlier that I was trying to think of. When we think about that, we realize that mm, these principles kind of keep us from growth. I kind of lost my point, but I want to say that what I'm trying to say is that um, when we are looking at that range of things, I lost my point. Where were we at? I'm sorry. Just give me a small nugget of where you left off at. My bad. One more time.
Um, I was just trying to talk about responsibility and autonomy and the puppy and the baby, and there's a lot of social. Oh yeah, after that, I talked about how there. I think that there is an adaptive process that can be found through the
Oh
hierarchy of
yeah,
expressions of. Yep.
that's what I was gonna say. Oh yeah. So the hierarchy. That's the part that I forgot about. So when I think about that, I think that um as we progress as a civilization, we're constantly refining that process of how we're being adaptive. And so when we look at like these dark ages compared to a golden age, all we're talking about is the amount of adaptive people or culture that we have. So I believe that, like I said earlier, we're constantly going up and down this kind of pattern of trying to get to what we consider balance. What happens when we get there? I don't know. But I do believe that the reality in the hero's journey is showing us that there's this pattern in the reality of balancing good and evil, and that the more we're able to adapt to wilder situations without reverting back to evil ways, the more stable we are. And so I believe that this up and down that we're going through as a civilization is meant to destabilize us for us to see the darkness that exists in the world, like we see the Epstein files, we see the war going on. It's blatant now because everybody was too tired to care at first. Now I'm too tired to not care. You see what I'm saying? And we're beginning to notice things, and the information is there. And so the societies become more adapted the better they are and the more close they are to nature. Is the point I was trying to make earlier. And as we get closer to nature, we get into a golden age. The further we get from nature, we get to dark ages. The Crusades, motherfuckers running around killing everybody. We know that. Genghis Khan ran around killing everybody. We see these periods where people say, you know what, fuck everybody's culture. I'm the best culture and I want to go kill everybody. Americans kind of tiptoeing on that line right now. Of like, you know what? If you don't agree with what you're doing, we just gonna get you up out of here. So it's like, how do we bring things back into harmony? I'm gonna leave it there because I feel like I rambled for a bit, but yeah.
You're good. You're good. So one point of clarification, or just a question. When you say that cultures that are adaptive are closer to nature, do you mean you don't mean like reduced to nature, right? You just mean aligned with nature? Is that safe?
When I mean close to nature, align. Yeah, I do mean align with nature. What I'm saying is that cultures that are in balance don't disregard nature. People don't give a fuck about their yard or the trees around them or if it should grow or not grow. They'd run over a squirrel, animal, dog. Anything is evil in their way. You're not cohesive to the environment around you. You see what I'm saying? You're not in any way comfortable with the environment around you, the actual environment around you, not the one that you created on top of it, but the actual environment you live on top of. Do you understand it? Do you know what grows around you? Are you scared of bugs? Like, are you commingling with the actual world? Like, do you care at all about what's going on in the state of things? Or are you just, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Service to self, service to others. Are you caring about your environment or are you worried about yourself?
Okay, there's two directions I want to go in this. I want to try to see if we can align on what adaptive means. Because if we align on what adaptive means, then we align on what's good and evil, and then we can also judge the goodness and evilness or the adaptiveness or maladaptiveness of cultures as a whole. Because one of the things that I try to attend to is the veering of our culture in one direction or the other towards adaptation and towards maladaptation. And I think that in the 20th century, there are many states that I believe went down not only the maladaptive path, but also the evil path, talking about Nazi Germany, talking about Maoist China, talking about Soviet Union. And one of the things I'm just trying to figure out is like, okay, well, how do we not do that? How do we not go down that path? But let me try to give you an example of what I consider a social principle that is also deeply nested in nature and can be found at the level of patterns of action. Um, so a lot of this comes from Jaak Panksepp, who's a affective neuroscientist, and he studied rats. And one of the things that he discovered is that rats and essentially all mammals have a play circuit. Like the same way that you have a rage instinct or a fear instinct, you have an instinct for play, which is really cool. It's really very interesting. But so he would do this thing where he would pair rats together and have them play, and rats like rough and tumble play like dogs, right?
Mhm.
If you have rat A that's 10% bigger than rat B, rat A will pin rat B just about all the time. There's not a lot that rat B can do. But if you pair the rats over and over again and let them play iteratively, if rat A doesn't let rat B win, 30% of the time, then rat B will stop playing with rat A. But the thing is, both rat A and rat B have an instinct to play, like they want to play. And so what you do see in the more sophisticated social rats is that rat A, the bigger rat, will handicap himself and let rat B win some percentage of the time. And you see that with well socialized dogs too. You see, if you see a big dog playing with a small dog, if they're both well socialized, the bigger dog will like roll over and like pretend to like get got by the little dog, you know? And so what I would what we would call that is, I don't know, fair play,
Yeah.
reciprocity or something like that. And I understand that in some sense that's our social principle that we're saying is fair play, but we that's just the descriptive term that we're using to categorize and describe the pattern of action. And so what do you think of that as an example of cultures or relationships really, but cultures that promote fair play are in this one example more aligned with the adaptive central pattern of reality compared to cultures that, let's say, disincentivize fair play.
For me, this goes into that law of one bag a little bit because if you perceive everything as a part of yourself, why would you want to destroy something that's a part of yourself? Now, I would want to make you stronger. I would want to help you build. I would hold space for you. And that's why I think the way that I think when it comes to how I deal with people that I consider evil or not people that I like is you're a part of me. You see what I'm saying? Good or evil. You're a part of me in this idea, in this world here. And if you understand that, why would I want to destroy you? Why would I not want to refine you in some way? If you're smaller, even I, and it's, I think animals get it naturally. Like we said, this is a subconscious thing that everybody has. And we pick up on it too, because most people, you ain't gonna just beat up on nobody kid or nothing like just to fucking do it. No, bro, I'm not even for what? It ain't even worth it unless I'm just pissed off or I'm just trying to prove a point. And even then, it's still not really justified. It's like, bro, you did too much. You know what I'm saying? Like you did too much. And everybody around will check you. And I think that's the thing that I'm really more so saying. I believe we've separated. The first thing I wanted to say was I believe we separated cultures in a way that's disingenuous. I believe humans should be the culture, and as humans, we figure out how we interact with other species, and that causes less confusion. That's why dogs of different breeds, like you said, can play because they're different sizes. They understand their strengths and weaknesses, and they commingle in a way that's reasonable. That to me is natural. And so, what I think is I think when we get into natural order, we don't want to destroy each other. I don't believe nature wants to destroy itself. But if you don't believe that the thing across from you is yourself, then you know what I'm saying? Like, are we not all in this together? We not on the same floating fucking rock? Like, this is where I think man psychology is dangerous. Because if we could agree that we're all Gaia's children, we all got the same mother, the planet, call it what you want to, Earth, Key, I don't give a fuck. We all live on the same planet, share the same air. How can we make this fun? That's the only game I want to play. If we're here trying to argue over who can stand where, I don't give a fuck. You can stand wherever you want to, as long as you don't bother me. And so, how do we figure this out? How do we come up with rules where everybody can be comfortable? And I think that's what we're talking about really when you ask that question is, does everybody practice empathy or only some people practice empathy? Like you said, only the high tier rats, the high tier social rats practice empathy. But the bottom of the barrel don't give a fuck. So how does that make the whole system work? Well, the people at the top that do practice empathy have to find a way to either avoid the people that don't or come up with a system that integrates them as well and gives them a place to be off by their fucking self. So to me, what I'm saying is that I believe that we have to reshuffle people. I believe we have a lot of people in places they're unhappy, and that's why we have issues. And you cut out on me, so I'm gonna stop just in case something broke.
I don't know what happened, but back.
But
Um,
yeah, that's what I really that was the point is that I believe that the natural way is us striving towards something where people are in positions where they can use their best qualities. Like rat A shouldn't be against rat B because they're different sizes. That's why we got weight classes. Put them against somebody who can fight. You know what I'm saying? Like Now, granted, if he just wanted to go up a class and have some fun because he's playing, then it should be playing. Both parties should understand that. And I think what's awkward about the reality that we live in is that we're all trying to work within rules we don't understand. And everybody's playing by their own rules. Honestly, everybody has their own little bag of rules. There's no conjoint understanding between, even in the same culture, people practice different religions, and different religions, people are different cultures and different in a different religion, same religion, different class, different race. We're still jumbled because of all the separation that's there. We can't ever just be human. You see what I'm saying? So for my biggest thing is like when I talk about the natural path is taking off all the layers other than human. What am I? I'm human. I don't have a name. I don't have a none of that. None of that matters. Because that is separation. That separates me from you and us keeps us from being able to commingle at a way that's cohesive. Because now we got to argue about all the semantics. If I'm human and you're human, what are we gonna do? We need to eat, sleep, shit. Simple. Anything on top of that is complicated.
I would say there's a lot to
Yeah, there's a lot there. I'm sorry.
no, no, you're good. You're good. There's a few things that I would push back on. One, just the same way that the balance of order and chaos is adaptive, the balance of unity and multiplicity is also helpful. And so when it comes to different cultures or the belief in different cultures, I actually tend to be a little more in your camp and really focus on the biological, honestly, because I feel like our culture, specifically with things like D and I, like there is such a push to focus on. There's a weird perverted push to focus on what makes us different. Maybe we can get into that because when you were talking about focusing more on the entire human species and the human race as a singular culture, I started thinking about Black culture and how Black culture being a part of American culture makes America amazing, in my opinion. But the reason that Black culture can be so great is because it exists in some sense separate, the same way all the other subcultures within America exist as their own thing. And so there's that relationship between the parts to the whole that seems to be unproductive if you either have nothing but different parts that don't have a unifying whole, or I would argue, and maybe this is kind of goes in some opposition to what you're saying, if we have nothing but a unity, but no parts that can diversify fruitfully in terms of the changing environment, then I think that's also a problem. A few conversations back, we spoke about the role for creative people. When I think of the way that society is organized, you can think of a city where it's like a downtown central part of the city where everything's gentrified, everything's kind of the same, more or less, maybe like the same kind of people live there. And then where there are not a lot of people in a lot of cities, these are where the creative people are. These are where the artists are. These are where like the people who exist on the fringe of society are. And what's cool is that that's where the new solutions come from. It's
Yep.
from the fringe, and then but you
But those
can
people will be considered evil by the society that's unified.
so I would disagree with that. I would say that
Or weird. Let me
it
put it that way.
if absolutely weird, abnormal, a deviation from the norm, absolutely. But deviations from the norm can be adaptive, especially when the norm is maladaptive.
So I'll
It's
put it this
yeah.
way, and the way when you were talking, I thought about it this way, and this really is a good point. We live in a quantum reality with a stagnant mindset. You see what I'm saying?
Break it down for me.
Okay, so let me put it this way. I believe that most people are stuck on what they believe and need something traumatic to happen to change their mind. And so I believe that what we were talking about earlier, we were talking about an adaptive and not adaptive society. The reason why society feels so stifling right now is because so many people are stuck in their ways. We're not we're not quantum thinkers. We can't believe that multiple things can be possible at once. And because we're so stuck on our ways and we're stuck in our ways in the same environment with different ways, we bump heads all the time. And because we're not quantum in our thinking, we're not allowed to move around. People ask all the time, how do you move around and be so social? Because I don't give a fuck if you agree with me or not. I can go in anybody's social circle and talk, pick up what they believe in, and we're gonna have a good time. That's the secret. The secret is being able to understand what the social group understands. That's why I understand. That's why I always use the word societal norms, because every social circle has a different norm. And if you're not aware of that norm, and you go into that social circle, you've now caused disturbance, like you said. Now, that disturbance could cause some people in the group to want to be your friend because they're tired of stagnancy. But it could cause other people in the group to not like you because you disrupt their comfort and you've broken their reality or their dream. And so when we talk about this attachment to ideas, I think what we talk about, like this idea of evil and good or evil, the idea is these people that not only are they attached to an evil idea, to a wrong idea, and it's not wrong because it's just like objectively wrong. It's just wrong in the situation or the environment that they're in, so much so that they're defending it in a way that they become evil. It's like, hey, I believe this is the way things work. I'm from the hood. I believe that I don't know. I believe that this group of people is bad because they came over here one day and wouldn't let me use their bike. So now I don't like them. So now I feel like it's justified to be on their street. And when I see their bike, I'm gonna steal their bike from their kid and I'm gonna punch the little kid because they stole my bike. And I feel like that wasn't fair. Or he came over here and talked to my friend, and my friend is over here now. So I'm gonna go over here and raise hell because now I'm alone. There's this, you see what I'm saying? Like there's this weird like thing that we do, and there's just it's the closest I could dial into it is attachment. So when I think about evil, I think about attachment to things that need to change. So people that are attached to things that need to change, they reject that change and become stagnant in their nature. And when you become stagnant in your nature, you become disruptive or disagreeable to what's actually going on. And so the way that it's worded is the idea of what's manifest and what's not manifest, right? So if something is going on in the world, say you learn a lesson, it's raining and you run and you fall. So now you think, oh, that corner over there is slippery. And you didn't acknowledge the rain being the reason you fell. So now every time you run around that corner, you see somebody run around that corner, you say, no, no, don't fall. But you don't understand that your attachment to that fall is situational. I hope I didn't make that too complicated.
I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. Now, would you also say the flip side of that attachment is evil? So you said that attachment to ideas, let's say, that need to change such that you won't let them change and you won't update, that's one characterization of evil. Would you also say that attachment to change for its own sake when it's unnecessary is also evil?
That's free spirits. You know, the free spirit people that can't ground it. So that's why I'm so big on balance. Like you need balance. Like you can't just be, oh, nothing matters. And you can't be, oh, everything matters. Some things matter, some things don't. It's situational. That's why I say it's quantum. Your ability to adjust to these things and be adaptable on the fly is what's necessary here. And not being stuck to any one particular thing. And so this is why we talk about adaptive. So like we forgot it. So most people, if you present an idea to them, they need time to process it. To me, an ideal person would be able to see what's going on, take all that information in, and figure out immediately what they needed to do.
Hmm.
So the closer we get to being able to observe and make a decision, the more we're in tune with nature. The more we need our minds and logic to figure it out, the more out of tune we are with knowing what's going on. Make sense?
I think so, man. I think that institutions, let's say religious institutions, but really institutions in general, were, maybe in some cases, are humanity's attempt to outsource our thinking and our moral judgments. It's like when I stole this from someone. This isn't my example, but when I drive on the road's already there for me. I'm not thinking how I'm gonna get from point A to point B, like in terms of the distance between my current state and where I want to be being like a wide open field and I can make up my own path. It's like, no, I'm going to adhere to the rules of the road and I'm going to uh go on these highways that have already been built for me. I'm going to stop at these signs that I've uh, been taught to stop at. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that there are patterns that have been canalized for us, essentially. Like there are forms and things that we can learn that we don't have to make everything up from scratch, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And what we try to do is to, what I think, take those patterns of action, patterns of ritual, patterns of religion, and then codify them into modern institutions and explicit rules and principles. But to your point, we get that wrong all the time. Or or we well this is and well this is part of getting it wrong. We fall in love with the explicit rule, which is somewhat different from the pattern of action. Because like I said, right, the rat isn't thinking I really want to play with this guy in the future, so I'm going to handicap myself to make sure that I'm a good play partner. It's like, no, it's just acting. And when we describe what it looks like, that's when it becomes explicit. But there's some kind of representational difference in the information compared to, let's say, or comparing the explicit and the implicit. And I think so much of what Carl Jung was trying to do, I see this in you as well, is we've fallen in love with the explicit. We've forgotten about the implicit realm entirely, the unconscious realm entirely, and we're trying to navigate only in this explicit realm. It's like, nah, bro, we got this whole other,
The whole
side
pool
of us we
down
have to
here,
figure
bro.
out.
Like
Yeah.
definitely, and I think that's important because it's like we. I'm gonna tell you what gave me a lot of peace of mind. So I call it sitting in the soul seat. People are like, well, what does that mean? Oh, well, I believe that all the ideas, all my thoughts, all of that shit that's going on is optional for me to interact with. If I decide I want to be dead as a doorknob, I ain't dead. I'm still here. My body is working, my mind is working, my thoughts is working. I've given the fuck up. This don't give a fuck. It don't. So it's something subconscious about you that don't care about what you thinking about you want to do. It don't. You can't cut off. You ain't gonna shut yourself off, my nigga. You can't. It don't exist. It's impossible to do. So at some level, you have to realize that you're here to play out something. Now you could decide to live on the path of, oh, I'm just stuck here and I'm abandoned on a rock, or you can be divinely placed and gifted. I choose to be divinely placed and gifted because stuck on a rock is depressing than a motherfucker. So I mean, it's all about choices here. That's my thing, is that it's all about choices. What do you choose to believe? What gives you peace of mind? If you're thinking that you're on a rock, howling at however many miles that some scientists put on a piece of paper to describe what we think is going on, sure, fine. That's what you want to believe. Does it help you any? Maybe, maybe not. I don't believe it matters as much. But whatever works for you, and you should not attach to that overly because eventually it's not going to work. You're going to be in a situation where what you thought was right is dead the fuck wrong. What do you do then? How do you adjust? How do you adapt? Do you become the villain and think everybody else is fucked up? Do you hate the world because they don't agree with your mindset? Or do you adapt? Do you realize that, hey, maybe I could grow more, maybe I could see more, maybe I could widen my lens? Not to permanently change it, but just to accept that there's a variety of things that are possible. That's all it is for me. I'm real big on that. Like I believe we suffer by choice. We choose to suffer because we want to widen our perspective of reality.
All right. This might be my last question, and then I got to roll. How do you reconcile your desire, let's say, for society to change so that way people can live better lives with the freedom of individuals to suffer on their own? Because this might be the cynicism in me that manifests as somewhat of a disagreement between some of the things we're saying. Like, I think that there are people out there who just want to suffer. I think it's worse than that. I think there are people out there who want to bring the world down with them. I think that there are people who are aimed at causing not just chaos like the helpful chaos that you need to encounter in the hero's journey, like chaos for chaos's sake. They want to destroy, they want to separate and divide, and they thrive on the idea of, well, everything's meaningless anyway, so I can just do whatever I want, and why should I care about what anyone else wants to do? You know? So yeah, how do you, and it doesn't have to be as far as evil like that. It could just be like, look, some people just don't want to work as hard. Some people just like whatever it is. Some people, no matter how much you educate them, they will never apply the education. And so how do you reconcile the desire for society as kind of an overarching, institution or framework that does play a role in constraining and influencing people's behavior with individual freedom?
Empathy, faith, patience. I believe I'm empathetic for where people are and understanding that everybody has a role to play in their own journey. I'm patient because I understand that this isn't something that you can make happen, that you have to have the experience and the time to rationalize this mindset and to understand it. And faith in the fact that I know it's gonna take a long time. I don't believe this happens in my lifetime. My only job is to contribute to it as much as possible. So I think that's what it is that I don't care if it happens for me or not. It is that's not what it's about for me. It's genuinely about, okay, observably, what are we doing? Heading towards balance. Have we gotten close? Fuck no. Have we tried? A couple times. Have we had some people that have made some good headway? Yeah. Is their idea still around? Yeah, people still use them to this day. So we want it. We want to understand it. We want to understand unconditional love. We want the Christ consciousness, but we don't believe in it. And if nobody believes in it, how do we achieve it? And so my whole thing is somebody got to believe in it's getting better. So I choose to hold space for us getting better. That's part of my like. We think about like the shamanic side or the metaphysical side. What role do you pick up as a magician? What work do you do? I hold space for the hope that we get better as a people, that we understand our worth and our value, and that we find a way to cohabitate in a way that's productive for the planet. I hope to see us get productive enough to get off this motherfucker and see what else it is out here. So we don't keep fucking up our backyard. Let's go do that somewhere else. Let's us get along so we can go have some fucking fun. That's my mindset. I'm so along. I realize that being along for the journey and learning how to love life is more important than caring about all the other shit, bro. I'm right here. Where we at? Whatever we doing, whatever this is, I'm here. How can we win? What do we need right now? Because despite all these ideas, we got to work on it now. What people actually think like, what people actually feel like, what people actually want to do. And the truth is, people fucked up. You can't win this race if you worried about it looking good now. It ain't gonna look good no time soon. If you want to play this game, you gotta play it knowing that it look ugly than a mother. But you gotta want to be here. You gotta choose it. You feel what I'm saying? That's the difference for me. I just choose it, bro. If I want to be a part, like you said, am I gonna choose being part of the chaos or a part of the help? I'm too intelligent to not pick a side. I gotta be on one side or the other because I'm gonna be doing shit. Am I causing chaos or unity? I like a little bit of both. I want to break you away from the things that you think work and give you something new. My whole thing is I want to say something that shakes you up enough to at least go look it up. Go pick up some new information. That's my only job. To be odd enough to inspire your curiosity and hope that you are curious about something that pushes you towards a positive path and not a negative.
I think that's it, man. I think that's where we're going to end it. Hey, man, I think
Yeah.
that was a good talk. I think we covered a lot of ground there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I'm gonna digest this for a good for the rest of the week.
yeah, and I think that's the important thing is that we have these talks. We come with a good idea of what we think we want to bring up. Like I was gonna get into a whole other bag with the Solomon witch. Like I did understand knowing the demons' names and things of that, but it's that's part of the growth thing is understanding that some topics are too convoluted for the message to be gotten by people that aren't gonna go look at it themselves. I think that's something that I've begun to pick up now as I deal with a lot of this metaphysics. Is like I'm realizing that the point that I got things at people aren't getting it at. So it's like I would have to like really like dig in here and give you this and give you that and change your perspective to this. And it's like I could just give you a simple truth. And eventually you'll run into a situation where that truth makes sense. And you'll be like, oh, that's what he was talking about. That's how old people do. That's what I realized from my elders. What do old people do? Old people give you a saying. Why are these old sayings important? Because they're true. And eventually, if you listen to me, you repeat it enough, eventually you're gonna be in a situation where you say the same damn thing I said. And you're like, oh, well, I'll be damned. Because life is gonna take you there. I don't have to do nothing but show you that there's options when you get there. You don't got to take it the wrong way. You can take it a positive way. You can learn from it. You could adjust to it. You could transmute it. But other than that, bro, I say I'm cool. I enjoyed the conversation. I'm ready for next week now. I don't even know what we talking about it. I'm ready for next week.
Me neither. We'll figure it out. Hey man, I appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, dog.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Peace.